If you've got a troubled mind or some spare time to spend with the radio on, you know you've got a friend.
You certainly have. Mike Smithson just arrived. Mike, it's wonderful to have you at the dining room table.
I've never been in a studio like this before,
No, I
Jeremy.
wouldn't think you had.
It's quaint and it's very you, obviously, and it's lovely to be here. And it is very much your dining room.
Yeah, well, I didn't have your telephone number, and I really should have, because I've known you for, 40 years or something.
It goes back to...
Was it 5DN?
5DN days. I remember the first opportunity I had on radio is that you took a day off on a Friday.
Yeah.
And I was asked to go in, and I loved it. I had no idea, well, I still don't, but I had no idea what I was doing and what I'd let myself in for, because I turned up and said, well, what do I have to do? And they said, well, you've got to talk for 3 hours. So that was a 9 till 12 show.
Yeah.
It was only the one. I might add. But thank you. You did give me a break into radio.
But you started off in pure journalism, didn't you?
I started off in, well, I'll go back just pre-journalism. I started doing an arts degree at Flinders University after school, and that was back in 1974, and that didn't go so... I just couldn't see it going anywhere. It was just one of those... if you couldn't think of anything else to do, and you probably weren't smart enough to do anything else, you did an arts degree.
Well, it sort of qualified you for a whole lot of different things, but you were then given the opportunity to make up your mind later, I suppose.
Well, a cadetship came up, and I applied for a couple of cadetships at the ABC and the Advertiser, and got down to the last few, but that wasn't good enough. And then a cadetship came up at the local newspaper, Messenger newspapers, and I started doing that, and I can say this because the editor at the time, who I didn't get on particularly well with, is no longer with us. Anyway, there is a reason I'm saying that, is that at one point I enjoyed it to a point, but I was being sent out, all over the place, having to travel from Blackwood to Elizabeth every day to work on the News Review, which was a great newspaper, but just didn't suit me, the travel time and everything else. And then an opportunity came up at Channel 7 where Rick Burnett, who was a fine journalist there, gave me a call and said, I'm leaving to join the government as a media advisor. Would you like to try out for a day? I suggest you give Joan Hall, Steele Hall's wife, Joan, a ring, which I did, and Joan organised me to go in for a Sunday as a tryout work experience day. And back in those days, the boss on the Monday, when I rang and said, how did I go? Because I loved it. And he said, well, you didn't stuff up, so I guess you can have the job. So I think it saved him interviewing about 1,000 others. And I thought, well, that's great to wrap. So then I had to go back to my newspaper editor, who had told me literally the week before, some people are cut out for journalism and others aren't, and you're not. And so I went back and said, well, I'm leaving. And she said, you what? And I said, I'm going to Channel 7. And she said, after all we've done for you.
That's gratitude.
So it was, and from then, from day one in TV, and that was 1979, from day one it just took off. And as you and your listeners will remember, back in those days we had the first Ash Wednesday bushfire, and I was pretty heavily involved in that. Started up near the Heathfield dump.
So that was 83.
No, we're going now. We've leapt all the way to 1980.
Okay,
and then Azari Chamberlain's disappearance, and I covered that, which was again just where you're literally carrying a can of film that now went on to become the famous matinee suit being laid out, and Lindy saying the dingo took my baby. I remember having to pick that film up from the airport where one of our freelancers had shot it in Alice Springs, or out at Ayers Rock, or Uluru as it is now, obviously. And they'd fly that down on a flight to get to Adelaide at about 3 o'clock. And that film was what every network was going to be using, because it was the biggest story of the day. There is a story with this too. Stop me if I'm going on too much. No. So I had this 16mm can of film sitting on the front seat of the car, and driving through town to get it processed, to then take it out to Channel 10 to have 4 copies of it dubbed off because it was film, it wasn't videotape, and it hadn't been processed yet. And I'm flying down Sir Donald Bradman Drive to our lab out in Norwood to get it processed. Come up to some lights and I wasn't concentrating, hit the brakes, the can flies off the front seat, hits the glove box in the old Kingswood news car and the lid flies off. And I thought, I have got this. This is the most valuable bit of stuff in Australia today, and I might have just ruined it. But fortunately, it was wrapped in a black plastic bag, so all's well that ends well.
God, yeah. But that the hell of a responsibility to get that to the processor and then get it to the television station.
Oh, and then write a story and then put it all together. But they said, no, you look after the film, pick it up from the airport. But these days, literally, as you know, sitting in your own living room, everything can be done online. There's no such thing as transferring a hard copy of anything. It's just all... It's all sent.
But is it as much fun? You know, I mean, Tony will tell me it is a lot more fun because it's intriguing. To me, it's a black magic or something close to it. But in those days when we did things by the seat of our pants, there was a romance about the business that I don't think exists now. All the stations are run by accountants, and the priorities are completely different.
Well, I guess the phrase you can use, you tell the kids these days how it used to be, and we have wide-eyed journalists and very good ones, up-and-coming ones, who are much, much younger than my own children, and I'm still there doing not the same job as I was doing back then. But occasionally you cast your mind back and you tell stories as we're telling today, and they are just wide-eyed. Number one, there were no such things as mobile phones. No. So you had a pager, but that didn't do much other than you had to ring the chief of staff if you got paged with a message. It didn't have a digital readout. All it did was just tell you were required to ring. And if you had to ring to communicate with anyone out on the road doing a story, which these days you just pick up the phone and hit redial or do whatever, you had to stop at a phone box. And you had to hope you had some money in your pocket, and you had to find a phone box and ring someone and hope they answered. It was primitive by comparison, and I still look back and think, how did we get news stories and news bulletins to air when even the simplest thing that you want to look up, a fact or a figure, and you just Google it these days. Those days, I can't even remember how we checked our facts. Because you had to ring someone to find out whether A, B or C or D was correct. There was no such thing as the internet.
No.
And you would have found the same thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it was a sort of a by the seat of the pants business. I mean, talk radio was the person on air and a producer. And these days, I listen to 3AW in the afternoon. And they've got a team of about 6 people. And that's even with the Google and all of the advantages that we have today to check facts and all the rest of it. I sort of wonder, I don't know that 3AW is being run by an accountant.
Well, I guess accountants have to make the network money or they have to save them money. But it's... Yeah, exciting days if you cast your mind back to then and the early days of television when now what we do at Channel 7, we have one studio, we have 3 cameras in it, we have 3 news services a day, which is more than our oppositions have. We have a morning, afternoon and evening bulletin, and that has saved a lot of jobs because clearly you need people throughout the day rather than for just one spot. It keeps journalists very busy during the day, producing 3 different stories, often on the same topic. Yeah. You have to develop the story during the day. But back in the old days, at Channel 7, and it would have been the same when you came out there at Strangways Terrace or to Channel 9 in 10th Street, that we would have productions rolling through 2 studios all day, every day. We had Wheel of Fortune, we had a morning show, we had sports shows on weekends, we had It's Academic, we had music shows. Now it was exciting times again, telling kids,
making television.
The studio was always full. There were always news sets coming in and out. There were people that were, world famous people coming in to have a chat on a show.
Yeah.
There were audiences that were filing in, 200 people in an audience watching a show being taped.
Yeah. And then for some strange reason, I mean, I look back on the early days at 5DN and my early days in Adelaide, and we had more head offices in Adelaide than they probably did, or possibly in Sydney. And we made television and we made radio and we did a whole lot of things, punching well above our weight. Then something happened and we allowed ourselves to become a branch office. And I drive up Green Hill Road sometimes and I see the Channel 10 had gone from this incredibly state-of-the-art building there in Gilberton. And it then moved into town, I think, smaller premises. And now I think it perhaps just has one room in a building on Green Hill Road, and the Channel 10 sign is gone, and it's just Paramount. That's all that's there. And that tells me they don't really do anything anymore in Adelaide. Why? Why?
Well, they do have a bulletin. They do have a local sports presenter and weather presenter, Tiff Warren, who does a great job and occasionally fills in. But it's essentially it comes out of their Sydney office, and that's their business. I'm not being critical of it.
Oh, it shouldn't be allowed in my book.
No, but you're exactly right. I'll give you a quick. I won't do maths on air because that never works. But Channel 7. And I'm not here to, pump up their tyres, but seeing they pay me, I guess I better. But as I said, we've developed from what used to be a half-hour bulletin 7 days a week, so 3.5 hours of news. We now have 2 one-hour bulletins each day, and that includes weekends we have an hour and a half, and another half-hour bulletin. We've quadrupled our local production on air. And I was saying to Caroline before that our ratings this year have gone to record highs.
Yeah, well, it's logical and just. You put in the effort, you get the reward.
Well, it's exactly it. What you put in, you get back. Yeah. And you look at radio stations that used to have dedicated newsrooms, and they used to have a local midnight to dawn shift, and and a lot of people got their very professional grounding in broadcasting.
You can't pull that out and expect there not to be consequences.
No, exactly. So I think it's great courage that you have launched your own show here.
Well,
and good
I'm
luck
curious
to you.
to see where it goes. Everything is possible because when commercial radio started in Australia, not just Adelaide, it was on a dining room table down Green Hill Road in Jack and Stella Hume's living room, very, very much the same as this. In fact, Tony's got some pictures of, I don't know, the house and the...
I better stick my head round the corner, keep talking.
Bits and pieces.
Oh, it's not much different to here.
Well, no. I can understand you saying that.
You're a bit older than Jack Hume was, but other than that, the equipment's
that's true.
Far superior. But it's
it's amazing what you can do. We've got this little roadcaster here, which is like a mixing panel, and we've got a computer and a telephone and a microphone, and that online can go not just around the city and the state; it can go around the world. Because we've got calls from all sorts of different places. We've only been on the air for 3 weeks. Oh no, this is the 4th week, I think, isn't it? Yeah, because the first week was a shakedown. Well, it was a shake up. It was a disaster.
And Jeremy, if I may, it usually happens that way, but if I may ask you a question, what's the end game with this, that you want to broadcast from here 24 hours a day?
Well, there's no reason why we can't. I mean, it's just a question of getting more people. There's no money in it, so we have to figure out a way to monetize it, and that will be through sponsorship, I guess. But if it can be done, I mean, I don't need to be paid, but if we get other people involved, we will. I can't see why we can't have a breakfast program, a morning program, an afternoon program, an evening program, and even a midnight to dawn program. There's no reason why not. Then, of course, we go out and we find ourselves a building, and we find it starts to grow and take shape. And
you've done that many times in the past, and it's worked.
It has happened, yes. And there's something about being told you can't do that that causes me to think, well, why not? I'll try. Doesn't matter. Were you part of Channel 7 or Channel 10 when they had that amazing swap over with the signals and all of the equipment and the buildings? And
it still confuses me.
Yeah,
it was the most confusing time for those who can remember, or for those who care to remember. I tell you what, the most damaging effect was for probably 2 or 3 years. You'd get in a cab and you say, "Can you take me to Channel 10 or to Channel 7?"
Yes.
Whichever. So I started at Channel 10. Well, I moved to Channel 10. Here's another story. I moved away from Channel 10 because I couldn't stand the bosses at Channel 7. I had a contractual blow-up with them.
Oh.
And I basically walked out the door, and this, not the local people, but it was the network people, and said, "You can get stuffed. I never, ever, ever want to see you or work for you again in my life."
That's chutzpah.
Yeah, oh yeah, I went and I was committed and, very happy with myself at speaking my mind. So then we changed call signs and we became Channel 7. So the guys who were doing my new contracts were the guys that I told to get stuff from my old contract.
Whoops.
So I did go back cap in hand and said, "Look, I know I may have said that, but I didn't really mean it." Essentially what happened was I think it was Robert Holmes of Court owned all the Channel 10s from memory except for one, and Skase owned the others, whatever it was, that Adelaide was the fly in the ointment for both networks, that the opposing bosses owned the stations here. Now, the easy thing was just to say, well, let's just make that Channel 10 and that Channel 7 and literally pull cables out from the transmitter at Mount Lofty and stick them in the other hole.
Yeah, but the difference in equipment and age of building and facilities and things like that would have been extreme.
Well, there was one other slight problem too at the time and I think you were working at Channel 10 there.
Well, I was working at Channel 7 around in Strangways Terrace. I was doing that little current affairs program. What was it called now?
State Affair.
State Affair, yes, I was doing State Affair. And I can't remember who I took over from, Paul Macon, I think.
No, or was it Guy Blackmore? Or Keith Conlon did it for a while?
No, they were on another channel, I think. Anyway, in comes Channel 10 and they didn't want a current affairs program. They wanted a 1 hour, whatever it was, eyewitness news or whatever it was called. And that was it for me. And I don't know how I ended up at Channel 7.
But you did.
I did.
But I couldn't remember if that was the 10 or the 7 days. But essentially what happened was that we just changed overnight. But working on Eyewitness News back then, that became 7 News overnight, at the time, Eyewitness News was the top rating news and 7 News was the bottom rating news. So essentially we handed over a product that was top rating and took on a bottom rating one through no fault of our own, which we sort of slowly built up again. But the worst thing of all was that you jump in a cab and say, "Can you take me to Channel 7?"
Yes.
And by the time you got to Lights Vision, you've buried in doing something else, looking through your notes, and you say, "What are we doing here?" And the cabbie says, "Hey, we're going to take you to Channel 7. I know that's a very bad accent. I have great respect for cabbies and their accents and everything else, but that was forever. People were going to the wrong place, or a talent would come into the station. You'd meet them there, and they say, "Well, I'm at Strangways Terrace," and you say, "Well, we're at Gilberton now," and trying to explain it was just a lost cause.
I think the whole thing goes back to young Warwick,
Fairfax.
Warwick Fairfax, when he tried to buy back, privatise John Fairfax and Sons, a illustrious company which owned, the Macquarie network. It owned the Seven network. It owned Women's Day. It owned the Sydney Morning Herald, The Age. And he was this silly young man. I say silly, I suppose he was idealistic, ambitious, who knows. And right in the middle of a Paul Keating era, which would perhaps indicate a little economic headwind, he, hairy-chested and all, decided he'd buy back the company, privatise it. And they went broke.
Well, what's the old joke? How do you make a small fortune? Give a big fortune to Warwick Fairfax and he'll do the rest.
How do you start a small business? Well, you give a big business to young Warwick and you'll get a small business fairly quickly. But, I suppose I can't be churlish about that, because out of that came the opportunity, because they sold down the Macquarie network and they sold this. I think Channel 7 was sold to Skase. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how Holmes à Court ended up with... Perhaps Holmes à Court ended up with Channel 10 simply because he started out that way.
The Bell Group owned 10 before Kerry Stokes bought into it. So it's what goes around comes around.
It's quite amazing. It's incestuous but fascinating, really, if you going through the ins and the outs of it all. I was surprised that AA didn't grab you to do the morning program.
I didn't want the morning program. Look, Jeremy, we both know radio is hard, bloody hard work.
Well, it certainly is. I suppose it is, but there's a limited number of people who could do that show, and you'd filled in I think you filled in doing breakfast at AA a lot.
I've done quite a few shows at AA. And look, AA can go the direction they want. I'm more than happy doing what I want to do, but I love radio. In many respects, I love it more than TV. But I don't know how you guys and people like you who did it for years and years and years, how you just keep that concentration going and keep developing stories. And Leon the same, Leon Bynum the same, that it's just a program. I like instant gratification. You think, no, well, that story's got to evolve over a number of days or weeks. Yeah. I don't know if I have the concentration to do that.
Yeah.
I might have just cut myself out of a future job, but
no. I'm quite certain that AA should have been or will be knocking on your door. What's your plan? Are you going to stay with television for as long as you can, or retire, or what? Treat
every day as if it's your last. No, look, I'm more than happy. I'm doing weekend news and weekday news. Weekdays, our 2 early bulletins for 3 days a week. Yeah. Doing weekend news. I've tried to make it slightly different to the way news has been done in the past, a bit more relaxed. Mm-hmm. If there is opportunity for a light moment, have that as well. Yeah. Now, as I said, it seems to be working because we've got record ratings, literally record since the OzTam system started in 2001. We just had the figures 2 days ago. I was saying to Tony and Caroline before, we could not be having a better run at the moment. Whether that translates to good revenue, I don't know. But the Matilda soccer certainly helped us a lot.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, what was it? 11 million people. Ratings peaked at 11 million people. God.
Well, on a good night, on the best night you'd ever have in an ordinary cycle of TV ratings, if you can rate 200,000 viewers, if you can, at any point during an evening, everyone will be doing cartwheels if you can get 200. We're normally around the 150, 160 mark. It peaked in the last Matilda's game at 465,000.
That's just Adelaide.
That's just Adelaide. So and all other stations ABC 10 and 9 and SBS put together rated about 25,000. So you can see what a phenomenon that was.
How did you come by getting the rights to it? Did you have to fight for them?
No, I think they were just about given away at the time.
Yeah.
It was less than $5 million, which in terms of a worldwide sporting right, a coup in terms of a World Cup, it's nothing. And where you get, it's literally nothing. You're paying $500 million for the Olympics. So to pay less than $5 million for an event that rates even better than the Olympic Games, James Warburton, the CEO at Channel 7, nationally made a great decision.
Now, where did he come from? Because he was somewhere else,
he was
wasn't
with
he?
10 for a while and then left, and from memory, there was a bit of a court battle about whether he could start at 7 or not, but he was the golden boy at the 10 network and has done, basically you look at this and he has the Midas touch in terms of what we've done this year so far. He's a nice guy. He's a hard businessman.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. You don't get to be in that position without being a hard businessman. But with the Matildas, it'd be very hard to sort of go out and get sponsorship knowing it's going to be good, but it's a one-off event, isn't it? You don't know how good it's going to be until it's on air, and then it's too late to sell. If
you were a salesperson for the network, you'd probably say, can we scrap all the advertising at the start of the third week and start all over again? And you'd be playing golf for the rest of your working life because you wouldn't need to be earning too much commission.
Yeah. Ever been interested in going into the executive side of it?
No. I've always thought if a news director, for instance, and it's come up from time to time, I always think with news directors, all they are is a glorified complaints department and doing rosters. They're much more than that, but that is part of. I look at news directors over the years, and someone goes in, and as soon as someone says to you, "Have you got a minute?" It's not going to be good news.
No. Yeah, I suppose it's also a bit like being a program director too, because on radio, because it's like being a child psychologist, a lion tamer and a child psychologist. The complaints and the problems that these people, particularly the temperamental ones, would throw up at you. I've never experienced that end of it. Thank God. I wouldn't have the patience. No. Anyway, it's wonderful to see you, and thank you very much for coming by.
Thank you. Can I have a chocolate biscuit?
A biscuit and cake.
Yeah. How long have they been?
No, they were just
last
brought
week,
in. No. They were just brought in this morning, fresh from the bakery.
Well, it's been sorry, I'll just put my phone on over there.
It's flashing.
Yeah, I know it does. I can't turn that light off. I might have to put it in the bin. But thank you very much, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's been my honour. Thank you very much for coming by.
And we go back a long way, and hopefully we will go into the future a long way as well.
We'll see where it leads. I well remember that. I think the last time I saw you was on the driveway up there.
You were between jobs.
The day they sacked me.
I was saying I went to the wrong house, and the person whose house I went to wasn't too thrilled with the TV crew set up. And I said, I'm here to see Jeremy. And he said, well, he doesn't live here.
No. That's, of course, the definition of a bad day when you open the blinds and you see the Channel 7 news team coming up the drive. You immediately think, I'm sprung. What have I done?
Well, I think we could say confidently it was a bad day all round.
Oh, well, no. I remember you saying to me, would you apologise or would you go back on it? And I said, no way in the world. No, I said what I said and I meant what I meant.
We better not go too far down that track.
No. I agree. Anyway, look after yourself.
Thank you.
And it's great to see you.